You know, it hit me this morning. Why do they make mouthwash look so appetizing? I'm glad there's warnings about, obviously, don't actually down the whole bottle. Don't down anything in the bottle, you know. Swirl around, spit. But I'm going to be honest, if Nintendo did like a Zelda green potion mouthwash, I'd buy it. I think as a little kid, you'd be like, oh, what's green potion taste like? Now, to be fair, there's also an inner child in me that would see Hawaiian Punch as potions. And that filled the void easily. So, honestly, that's the safer option. Nintendo, just partner up with Hawaiian Punch, make some Zelda potion shop beverages. I think you're good to go. That actually would be cool, though. People want, like, a Zelda theme park for the Universal world, you know, because they have the Super Mario universe stuff. I think Zelda is a really good next thing they could do, and do a potion shop. That would be incredible. Sell red, blue, green potions. Maybe sell Grandma Soup from Wind Waker, but I think there's a lot of potential there. And oh my gosh, the merchandise. Like I tell Cameron all the time, whether, you know, you basically, I think it's every month someone gets a Majora's Mask tattoo. Now, I'm not saying that the Universal Park is going to be giving tattoos to people, but it's more about like how recognizable that one mask is just in media. So imagine selling Majora's Mask masks, and you could do like kid tattoos, the ones that come off later. But yeah, the merchandise potential is insane. Bottles, just flat out Zelda bottles. Like you could talk to some, you know, in Branson, Missouri, they have glass makers in Silver Dollar City, and it's actually one of my favorite parts of Branson is just watching them be masters of their craft. And you could do something with Zelda, like actually hire blacksmiths, oh my gosh, to make like megaton hammers, master swords, bottles. Now obviously the first two are way more expensive, but people would buy that. So yeah, I definitely think Nintendo is still not fully tapping into the potential of their merchandise with their IPs just in general. So I think Zelda will pop up. You know, 2026, probably they might announce it next year. I mean, we got the movie coming out this year. There is a big anniversary for Zelda and Metroid this year. So I could see that as pretty soon to announce the Zelda part of the Universal Park. I mean, I think the Mario Universe stuff already gets a lot of people to go to that park. So there's probably definitely a lot of talks there already. I've thought about for years, whether it's college or doing, you know, playing saxophone, playing piano, playing fighting games, people say you're working hard, right? They'll say to other people that you're working hard, or people will say this is, you know, hard work. And it's interesting for me to dwell on what is hard work? What is working hard? Because, you know, when you play an instrument, oftentimes the challenge of the song is to practice. And then you ask, what's practice? Well, if you have an instructor, they're going to often tell you to practice scales. It's the bread and butter of playing an instrument. You can call upon your notes and be able to play so many different songs in front of you. Obviously, there's more to that, you know, timing and understanding what each note means. But when you break it down, now it's not really becoming hard work. And again, there's a giant context of different songs, from Mary Had a Little Lamb to the final boss theme in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on piano. A little bit of a difference there, and transposing the choirs and stuff. But regardless, what is working hard? Usually when I hear like I'm working hard, it's from an outside view, and I was like, oh, what do you mean? And in this case, like in Super Smash Brothers, you know, I main Yoshi and second DK in every game, and some people say, they'll tell me I can't play Yoshi, he's too hard, or they're like, I can't play DK just because of the fighting style of like a grappler, tend to be with patience. And so to me, it doesn't feel like these characters are hard, but understanding the perspective of where do I begin? I think that's a big part of when someone says that's hard to do, that work is hard, is what's the approach? What's the first angle here? How do you begin? And that's why I think good teachers, good coaches are underrated And I mean genuinely good ones. Unfortunately, there are instructors or coaches, again, whether it's music or general education or fighting games, that they're prioritizing just the money from lessons. But the good teachers make money as a nice bonus, their nice living, as a positive effect from being genuine. They understand how everyone can approach something differently. There's a blend of good structure underneath, again, the chords you play in a musical instrument, but there's also understanding how we all can approach things a little bit differently. And so I think by being a teacher and understanding, what does my student get out of music? What does my student get out of Super Smash Brothers, right? What are their ambitions to compete? What are their ambitions to play? I think that's already going pretty far. And I think that's a big part of why music instructors and coaches in general want to get to know their students ASAP. Because getting to know them is a big part in it, because we all press buttons differently. So what is working hard? And, going into college, and, they will say college is hard. It's like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? And, general education, at least in the United States, your first 2 years around that, getting an associate's degree, though people say that often gen ed is its own weed out process, where if people can't buckle down and do critical thinking skills, they can't make it through. And it was challenging overall. You have to discipline yourself. You have so much more free time, and yet you don't. You have to be able to control yourself. And this comes back to the approach. How do you approach something that is said to be hard? Because I think if you approach and start taking some steps, it's not going to be as hard as some people might say. Again, there's context of rocket science versus music theory. And ironically, some people say music education can be as tough as, going into medical school or being a space engineer. This also, we're starting to dissect how our brains are all different. There's similarities, of course, but the way in psychology that we all have different degrees of intelligence, just by the way of how the brain operates. And I loved that in Intro to Psychology. They talked about there are different ways that our brains process things. I loved learning about spatial memory. Spatial memory was big on being, obviously nowadays we're not as big as exploring the depths of the ocean, exploring the vast ocean. And we're not there yet where we're exploring other planets and galaxies, but there is a degree of intelligence for traversing jungles and general terrain to where I remember that rock. Oh, okay. We are 5 blocks away from home. Now, I don't know if you'd say blocks back in the year 998. maybe you do, They had roads, yeah, but there is a degree of intelligence for something like that, with spatial memory. And so, as an instructor, it's such an interesting approach of when you're teaching at a college, you have so many students. There's so many people that learn differently. So you have to grasp what is consistent for everyone to not make the work feel hard to do. But also I heard this throughout all of college, all the colleges I went to in my process of getting a bachelor's and a minor. It's more than on my hand that I can count of teachers and students that emphasized office hours. Teachers have dedicated office hours across the country, and not just in the United States, but in general. And taking advantage of those office hours are huge. It is open time for students to have direct instruction. And this goes back to private music lessons, but now in a public university setting where I've done it multiple times, office hours for programming. When I felt like I wasn't getting something, the teacher would try to understand how I was approaching a program and pointing out where I might be messing up, which is really cool. They're already paid to be there, but the fact that teachers can go out of their way during office hours to understand you more as an individual, I think is important. Talking to your teacher about what they're teaching is also pretty big, because teachers, they will understand if you're actually wanting to learn, because being able to approach things with critical thinking skills is a big priority in college, and I think it's just a good priority in being competent in life. So when you're talking to your teacher and they're saying, wow, they're actually wanting to understand the concepts of biology, even if this person isn't a biology major, general education is to make us well-rounded. And so to me, being able to approach that with critical thinking skills, even if I'm not studying how, the genetics work in bees, I can still understand the importance of animal behavior. Why does this happen? And can this go into other things in life? You know, so some people like to ask, I'm going into being a NASCAR driver. Why would I ever use algebra in my life? You know, you have kids that can be ambitious like that in grade school, and they might try to disrespect something like math or algebra. And in that case, you just say, well, algebra is solving for what's missing. And so if you're, let's say you are a competitive racer, they're doing algebra all the time because they have to gauge how long the average pit stop is going to take, and can I get back on the road? They're averaging what their opponent's paces tend to be. You know, the rival. What are they known to go for? Like, do they pick up the pace towards the end? Do they coast in the middle? There's all these solve for X things going on there. And so I think at its core, working hard starts with the approach. And if you approach with an open mind and an ambition to get better, and ask people around you for help, have that humility as a virtue to grow, the work isn't going to feel as hard as some people might say. I love Mondays.